Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. Inazuma's most explosive firework enthusiast is back for her first rerun. In today's video, I'll be going over 40-ish things to consider for our favorite pretzel enthusiast, Naganohara Yoimiya. Today's insert character here on the chopping block for the brutal truth about insert character here is, at long last, Yoimiya. Yoimiya's initial banner was way back in August of 2021, and nearly an entire year later, she's finally coming back for the second half of patch 2.8. If having Genshin Impact's largest red pretzel thing is your favorite thing ever, then Yoimiya is an absolute must pull. End of the video, like and subscribe for pretzel enthusiasm. But for others that are more concerned about her performance in combat, then you've got to stay a bit longer. But really quick, it's time to pay some bills. And today's video is sponsored by Blade Idol. Her take on an epic hero's journey as a humble herb collector stumbles onto a legendary sword and begins their adventure. Blade Idol takes the best parts of so many idol games and mashes it into one stimuli-overloaded experience. Fill your screen with huge damage numbers after merging countless weapons and powering up your pet, relics, and insignias. There are tons of collectibles like these super omega fun costumes that you can get through dungeons. Who doesn't want to do quadrazillions of damage while wearing shark pajamas or a cat costume? Customize and specialize your character with specific ability enhancements, skills, weapons, and costumes. Blade Idol allows you to progress how you want to progress. Blade Idol lives up to the idol in its name, as you can idle whenever you need to and still get tons of rewards. Never let a busy day hamper your experience. And if you start to play between July 19th and July 30th, you'll get 10,000 diamonds, 50,000 enchant stones, and 20,000 option enhanced stones, all for free. So now's the perfect time to start playing. Just smash that link down below to start idling in Blade Idol. Let's get started with what makes Yoimiya Yoimiya. Her elemental skill, Niwabi Fire Dance. This ties into her normal attacks as well, but let's focus on one thing at a time. Yoimiya's elemental skill takes less than half a second to cast and infuses her normal attacks with pyro damage. Now the most important thing about her elemental skill is that it multiplies her normal attack damage. The way this is presented is quite confusing, but to simplify the explanation for it, it's its own multiplier. That's right, it's not counted as pyro damage, it's its own entirely separate multiplier. However, there is a catch with this, and it's that it does not multiply flat damage. We're getting even more into the nitty-gritty now, but to also simplify the explanation for this, her E does not multiply Yunjin's buff. One great thing about her elemental skill being the main source of Yoimiya's damage is that she's also not burst reliant. Is there a lone treasure hoarder stopping you from completing a trivial daily? No need to bring the god of Geo to summon a sky meatball or split the heavens with an electric god's boo-boo blade. Just press her E and left click a couple of times. Yoimiya generates particles throughout her E when hitting things with her normal attacks, and it's almost always enough for the Shimenao's 15 energy requirement or to refill her Q by the end of her elemental skill. Unfortunately, her E does have a long 18-second cooldown with a 10-second duration, therefore having significant amounts of downtime. The 18-second cooldown is also a bit awkward due to it being 3 seconds longer than Bennett's 15-second cooldown. And finally, her E provides very small gains as you level it, but in my opinion, it's still worth leveling as much as you can afford to. Next, we can talk about the next major piece of Yoimiya's puzzle, her basic attacks, Firework Flare-Up. Together with her elemental skill, her pyro-infused normal attacks make Yoimiya Yoimiya. Amazing acrobatics that would make any Olympic athlete green with envy aside, her normal attacks have a lot going for them. During Niwabi Fire Dance's duration, her E-infused normal attacks provide excellent single-target DPS, actually one of the best options for single-target DPS in the entire game. Being a normal attack mashing bow character, Yoimiya is also the most Unga Boonga ranged character in the game. No need to do charge attacks, constant animation cancels, no need to worry about energy or stamina management, no need to worry about aiming even. The only thing preventing her from being completely Unga Boonga is that she's easily interrupted, but you can always slap the thickest shield in Genshin Impact onto her to fix that problem. You do have a small amount of skill expression as well with N5RR cancel, which is a fairly minor optimization that sweaty gamers like myself enjoy doing. The auto-targeting, while having many issues, also has many benefits. Yoimiya will mercilessly gun down anything around her provided it's within her auto attack range. This leads to an extremely comfortable autopilot Ungu Bungu playstyle as mentioned earlier. She also auto-targets annoying airborne enemies with ease, such as specters, the water birds, and the electro bird oceanid thing boss. It also auto-locks onto things teleporting around you like wolves and mages. However, there are some issues with the auto-targeting, such as missing overworld enemies that run around terrain primarily to get to you, and locking onto useless things like Electrocicin flies summoned by an Electrocicin mage. Overall though, once you get used to the auto-targeting and its pitfalls and benefits, it's a great thing to have. Because Yoimiya spams normal attacks, she's also a great driver for sub-DPS characters like Xingqiu, Yelan, Fischl, and Beidou. Being a normal attack spammer, she's great with Yunjin as well. Her normal attacks have standard ICD, which for Constellation 5 and below Yoimiya's, this allows her to reliably vape her N5 for the first attack cycle. And I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but her N5 is the hardest hitting part of her normal attack string. Often overlooked, her charge attacks power creep Amber for lighting torches in the overworld. The little homing things can also help find hard to spot torches as well. However, not everything is explosive about Yoimiya's normal attacks. First of all, despite being themed around fireworks, Yoimiya's main source of damage, her normal attacks, don't even appear to be like fireworks. They are completely devoid of any explosions and area of effect, and her normal attacks are entirely for killing single targets. And finally, since the hardest hitting part of her normal attack is, as I mentioned, N5, and she's a bow user with no super armor, she's easily interrupted before she can output her N5, which can result in a loss of DPS. The last and the least important part of Yoimiya's kit is her elemental burst, the Ryukin Saxifragi. Unfortunately, her elemental burst is rather low impact, slow to come out, and not an important part of her kit. First of all, it doesn't snapshot, which overall is a con, but can be a pro in some limited situations. The ticks on it are activated when a teammate deals damage to the target with the burst on it. As such, Yoimiya herself can't even activate the damage for it. One thing that does make it interesting is that it moves from one enemy to another if the original enemy it was on dies. This makes it a decent option against staggered enemy spawning patterns where there are multiple enemies and they spawn one after another dies. Unfortunately, when enemies spawn in waves, the burst will not pass on to the next wave of enemies. It also does a little bit of AoE damage for an otherwise completely AoE barren character. This is Yoimiya's only AoE damage option. It's worth noting that it does work well with Anemo grouping like Venti's Black Hole, because not only does Venti's Black Hole group everything for the AoE to actually hit everything, Venti's Black Hole also does damage which activates her burst. And lastly, her Constellation 4 reduces her cooldown by 1.2 seconds every time her burst ticks, which can save a few seconds on her rotation. Her burst is standard ICD, which means that it can't even vape every hit. And finally, because Yoimiya is recommended to run with Shimenawa's, using her burst at the beginning of a rotation leads to the Shimenawa's buff not being up, since she needs 15 energy for that. So overall, you guys can see why her burst is the least impactful part of her kit. I personally rarely use her burst when I use Yoimiya. The next subject I always talk about in The Brutal Truth About Insert Character Here is this character free-to-play friendly? In Yoimiya's case, I'd say the answer is fairly. Long-time free-to-play players are very likely to have a rust and possibly a few refinements on it. The Rust is an exceptional free-to-play weapon for Yoimiya and at Refinement 5. It's actually surprisingly close to a Refinement 1 Thundering Pulse. For those that have been abysmally unlucky with getting the Rust though, the Hamayumi is a decent option as well. And for those that do not have the Rust or any bow billets, at that point I'm not sure what to say except I'm sorry. Yoimiya's Ascension stat is crit rate, which is in my opinion the best Ascension stat overall, making her easier to achieve desired crit ratios. Yoimiya's best artifact set, the Shimenao's Reminiscence, while being difficult to properly reminisce its name, is literally the best artifact dungeon to farm in the entire game. Not only are you powering up your Yoimiya, but you're also powering up a powerful sub-DPS character like Xingqiu, Yelan, Xiangling, and even Beidou. The other members on Yoimiya's team do not even need good artifacts like Bennett and an Anemo character, so you're actually building an entire Yoimiya team just by farming this dungeon. You also have the Echoes of an Offering and the Crimson Witch of Flames, which are reasonable choices, although I personally recommend the Shimenawas over the others. And once properly built, even free-to-play Yoimiyas will feel extremely powerful, deleting enemies one at a time. Now, is she the best character for free-to-play players? Probably not, as most of the community believes other DPS characters like Raiden, Hu Tao, Ganyu, Ayaka are better options, and supports like Kazuha and Zhongli are incredibly universal. And of course, you are limited on Primo Gems, so you do need to choose which characters you go for. But you can rest assured knowing that if you're willing to treat Yoimiya like a hyper carry and heavily invest into her artifacts, she will be an extremely powerful single target DPS character. And finally, with the advent of Yelan, it's debatable now that her best general use team has 3 5-star characters, which isn't too free-to-play friendly, being Yoimiya, Kazuha, and Yelan. Oh, and also it has the only 6-star character in the game, Bennett. So this fact isn't particularly free-to-play friendly. However, Yoimiya can easily use Sucrose instead of Kazuha and Xingqiu instead of Yelan and perform just fine. As for her constellations, well, at Constellation 6, Yoimiya gets roughly a 60% increase to her single target damage output. This isn't particularly high for a 5-star character, but one of the biggest drawbacks of her Constellation 6 is that it messes with her vape combos, since the additional arrows share their ICD with her normal attacks. Now, quickly talk about some miscellaneous things about Yoimiya before providing my final, unfiltered, and massively controversial opinion. Sadly, our wholesome and endearing Yoimiya was horrifically scorned by much of the theory crafting community when she was released. She was being compared in a one-to-one sense as a single target DPS character to Hu Tao, and overlooked for what makes her good, like her ranged attacks. I'm sure there's still a portion of the community that views her as a terrible character. Personally, I always felt like she was fine and balanced. Not the strongest and certainly not the weakest, but Hu Tao's existence is certainly a thorn in Yoimiya's side in terms of her place in the meta. Community perception aside, Yoimiya being reliant on her elemental skill and normal attacks means that she is relatively energy agnostic. However, there are some synergy issues with her gearing, like the Shimenaos with the Hamayumi. Next, Yoimiya is also compatible with all the best supports and sub DPSs in the game. She's great with Bennett, Kazuha, Zhongli, and she works well with Venti. She can be played as a hyper carry with Yunjin, as a Vapor with Xingqiu or Yelan, and even as an overloaded driver with Fischl, Beidou, or Yai Miko. With that being said though, she loves hogging a bunch of the top tier supports, as you can see, and frankly most Petch characters will succeed with Bennett, Kazuha, and a 4th support like for example Zhongli. Lastly, her usage rates have been incredibly middling. She tends to be used much less frequently than the bane of her meta existence, Hu Tao, although she's used much more frequently than older 5-star DPS characters like Xiao, Child, and Klee. As for speedrunning, she's rarely the fastest, although she did set some records versus the Perpetual Mechanical Array. That being said, she's also almost never the slowest. So there you go, I'm not going to reread all the pros and cons for this The Brutal Truth About Insert Character here, but I will flash them before your eyes on the screen really quick. Now I'm going to talk about some of my unfiltered and insanely controversial opinions when it comes to Yoimiya. Again, I think Yoimiya is just fine as a character. I was one of the few that thought she was a fine and balanced character when she was released, and even until today my position has not changed in the slightest. Not every character has to destroy the meta like Ganyu did when she was released. Does Yoimiya have some jank and stank and problems with her kit? Yes, she does, but so does literally every character in the game. Yoimiya was my character of choice for a very long time in the overworld until Yelan came out, and even to this day I predominantly use Yoimiya on the other side of Abyss 12 that I'm not showcasing for most of my videos. So just like in the lore where she's doing a lot of work behind the scenes, she does that for me. She's just an incredibly reliable and easy to use character. So if you're ready to be a hipster Yoimiya haver and enjoy Unga Boonging scorching hot arrows all around her, then Yoimiya is going to be a great choice for you. But if you already have Hu Tao and don't feel the need for another pyro DPS, I fully understand why Yoimiya might be a skip. Do smash that link down below for today's sponsor to check them out real quick and also to help out my channel. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.